Everyone, today I'm talking about a very niche subject, but one that I've been spending quite a bit of time on the last few days, and that's the Alaska Rural Health Transformation Program's implementation and planning pathway deadlines. They're due on the 22nd of June. So there's about 6 days left, and a few of my clients have been advanced to apply for funds, which is great news. And I thought, because I've been focusing on the Rural Health Transformation Program for a few months in my content and connected with a lot of people who are going for it, that I would create a video today walking through some of my thought processes and approaches to completing this implementation pathway proposal. So if you're in this space, if you're in Alaska or you're applying for this funding from outside of Alaska, or indeed if you're going for Rural Health Transformation Program funding in any other state, I think that you'll find some of this useful just to see how one goes about it, because I haven't seen a lot of other people doing videos like this. So for context, there's $272 million available through Alaska's first year rollout of the Rural Health Transformation Program, a $50 billion federal program, which will be rolling out in every state. Alaska is the largest recipient in terms of dollars received, and there's been a lot of interest. So over 1,700 proposals were sent to the Department of Health in Alaska for a slice of that 272 million, and they have advanced 403 to what they're calling the implementation pathway. So they've said that only 200 of that 403 there or thereabouts are going to actually receive funding. So anyone who has been approved to apply to this implementation pathway is really on a 50-50 runoff against the competition. So a lot's at stake here. And particularly, I want to highlight the opportunity for this to turn into 5 years of funding. If you can get money in year one, then you stand a much greater chance of continually receiving RHTP funds through years 2 to 5 than if you're rejected in year one, then you're coming in as a new proposer in year 2. I think most, well, over half, which is most, of the year 1 implementation pathway recipients will be continually funded in year 2 onward. So let's jump into it. I'm going to talk you through the process of this webinar. I'm going to begin by generating a number and picking a proposal from the state's summary of all letters of interest received. So if you search Alaska RHTP LOI summary on Google or wherever else, you'll come across this document, which helpfully has laid out what everyone is proposing. And if you're watching this and you haven't been advanced or you've been deferred, don't worry. I think you'll still find this useful, and I encourage you to go through this document, use Control F to do keyword searches, and find out, is there anyone in your area or in a similar space to you that maybe has been advanced, who you could approach to partner with and say, hey, we would, well, maybe not Accenture. They're a bit big for this. We're Access Telecare. Hi, we saw your proposal, Alaska Hospital and Healthcare Association, and think we could be a great fit to partner and assist you on it. Back to my number generator. So let's generate a number. I'm going to go to the nearest proposal around this number that's been advanced and take that as my case study for this presentation. So 1094 will go on to page 1094. If you're not sure who I am, by the way, I'm Adam. I run a company called Applichat. Founded the company in 2019. We've been working in Alaska since 2022. We've partnered with a couple of successful proposers to this RHTP round in Alaska. We help with grant strategy, grant writing, and then pulling together the team to implement. So across public awareness, technical app development, and consulting, we're really the fulfillment partner that helps successful awardees that aren't quite sure how to make their program successful, and they have some gaps maybe in reporting or other areas of the services. They need a contractor to come and fill in, and that's what we do. If we don't have the expertise, we bring in subcontractors and kind of help you outsource a lot of that difficult and tricky work that's often outside the grasp of your in-house skill sets. Going back to my result 1094. So I will go down and find the next green one. So here we have a Nilchek Traditional Council ADA accessible mobile integrated health expansion for frontier communities. So I'm going to take this as my test case. You can see I took my number and then I just scroll down to find the nearest one and walk you through how I'm approaching this for the clients who I'm working with and I'm completing the proposals for. I just didn't want to do theirs because there's some confidential information in those. Anyways, jumping over to a few documents that you need to be aware of. So as you're going about this, come on to the State Department of Health website, and they've been really good about filling this in with helpful content. If you come down to applicant resources, you'll get the applicant resource guide. You also get the project evaluation framework, portfolio analysis, and the funding pathways description. So open all these up and we'll jump into them. If you're watching this, maybe you're in this pipeline, project and implementation grants. And the important thing to realize is that this is for fully scoped project ideas that are prepared to receive funds. Why is that important? Well, you need to show that at the drop of a hat, day one, you can start implementing your proposal. Remember, there's a really short period where activities can be performed in this grant. Runs a year from August, and the state are having to spend a really big amount of money when it comes to historic levels of funding for these types of schemes into rural health, where innovative projects get cash injections. So 272 million needs to be spent. They want to spend it with those that already have a strong idea of what they're going to do and aren't going to spend 6 months in a procurement process to get help, for example. They are prioritizing fully scoped projects that are prepared to receive funds. Okay, so you need to really, really tune into that. See here it says fully developed, well defined, formalized partnerships, infrastructure in place, considerations integrated. Whenever you're writing your proposal, you need to highlight that you are the most ready of the readiers who are going for this. And any ambiguity or gaps in terms of the plan, milestones, partnerships is going to raise eyebrows and draw scrutiny. So, what do you do about that? Well, you need to start sorting this out. If you haven't got any of these nailed down, collaborate with your team to do it. So I'll pull up here the partner matrix to describe your partners and their roles. Include all organizations with a meaningful role in project design and evaluation, formalization guidance, MOU, letter of support, or informal. So this says to me that perspective, I mean, it is an option if you want to put it in there, but they haven't said prospective as in we're going to reach out to them and try and get something sorted after we get the money. They're saying that you need to have an MOU, letter of support, or informal, at least a verbal or email based agreement. So those prospective partners that you have in mind, but haven't even said that they want to work with you verbally or email wise, then you need to get out to them. You need to start reaching out, start picking up the phone before the 22nd, and try and build out this table with the number of supporters, the most number of supporters that you can. Because as I said, this really is make or break factor. The readiness of your project often is going to rely on the client population, the patient population, the tribal health consortia that control so much of this. And if you have a letter of support or an MOU, you're going to be seen as meeting that readiness criteria and function. Same comes to the work plan. So this is all downloadable from the Alaska Community Foundation platform, which I'll jump over to in a second. But again, you need to show that it's well defined, the scope, objectives, milestones, deliverables. If you don't know what they are, see, to be honest, it's a case of coming up with it now. And that doesn't mean that it has to be perfect or has to turn out how you are proposing it will, because I imagine there's going to be a formal agreement signed after this, but you need that ballpark idea of what you can achieve in the time limit, August 1st to 30th of June, 2027. I think I said it runs for a year. It's actually less. It's 10 months. So that's my first thing to urge you on. Jumping across to another that document I grabbed from their site is the portfolio analysis review. So essentially, the state considers all its funded programs to be the portfolio, which it then needs to present to CMS and to say, here's how we geographically spread things, here's how we reach the most in need communities, here's how things were done fairly and are spread across the various initiatives, like, for example, tech, workforce, that CMS are prioritizing. And I encourage you to think, how can you stand out as a member of the state's portfolio? So project service area, initiative, population served, organization or provider type, healthcare delivery or support. So let's go over to this ADA accessible mobile integrated health expansion for frontier communities. Even that title's ticking a lot of boxes that would be on this. So for example, they're in the Kenai Peninsula, which is one of the regions that are, to be balanced, they are a tribal entity. So it's not like they could propose to serve this outside of the Kenai Peninsula, outside of their sovereign territory. But they could say that, and one of the things that I'm saying to some clients is that we're doing this here in this area, can't really be outside this area for year one, but we hope to create a model that is replicable outside of our area through other other recipients maybe in the future or other organizations. So reading through their LOI, it's a mobile care offering, and they're expanding to a hub and spoke access model. How it works: they have a mobile integrated health program focusing on prevention, early intervention, etc. And they want to make their mobile unit ADA disability accessible, increase the space, and improve access for elders. This reduces the travel burden, and they're arguing that's a transformation, not an expansion. All right. So I've digested that, and I'm going to come base here. As I said, you can think about if you're a bit more flexible with where you can offer stuff, then consider going out and taking a few boroughs. Like Keenan Peninsula is more populated than North Slope, for example, or Yukon. Is your platform something that could be scaled statewide? And if so, maybe it's better to focus on regions that might have less proposers coming from them. In terms of the initiatives, that's pretty set. But if you come down here, you want to serve some of the target populations too. So rural Alaskans is in there, which is great. But the proposal I showed you, it's looking at complex care, it's looking at elders, vulnerable or underserved populations too, and maybe touching chronic diseases as well. So it's not just everyone obviously everyone who can access this will benefit from it, but it comes, I think, in strongly where the mobile clinic is serving the community's elders, people with disabilities, people with complex needs, who are all kind of target populations. So consider that. Like, how will you stand out in the portfolio? You can also look at this document and think, how do you stand out against the competition? So if someone else was doing this, say they're doing it for the whole Kenai Peninsula, how can Nilchik stand out against them? Like, they're focusing more on ADA requirements, elders, individuals, and maybe their tribal members. And because it's 50-50, the state is unlikely to fund two very similar projects which are doing the same thing in the same area. So do bear that in mind. Use your keyword search perhaps to search for organizations you know of or organizations in the borough that you're looking to serve. So if it was the Northwest Arctic, let's say, now because they're kind of included in this, it's a bit hard, but if I go through that, quickly, I can pick up all the green ones here. I tried to use AI to get this into a sheet format, but it didn't work. So that's another point there, Jack. Just bear in mind what the competition is and how you're going to beat them. Now, final thing to highlight for you is the scoring criteria. So whenever you're doing a proposal, really important to look at how you're going to be scored. So, well, I don't know where to start with this because there's so much, but whenever you're writing your proposal, check it against this. You can use AI. You can upload this to AI and upload your proposal and get it to suggest how you can make it more excellent and get it to point out where you're not meeting the criteria. And useful to realize that this at 20% is a large category alignment with the initiative. So you might need to reopen the state's application to the entire program. And you can find that you can just search like Alaska RHTP application. And bear in mind this, on the webinar the state did, they said 3% on admin. So if you see 10% here, they have told us that because this is like statewide, they're using 7% of that to do their admin, and then they're giving the recipients that 3%. So bear that in mind. And I'm sure you're aware of all like the permitted use, but don't forget this document. I think it's easy to launch in and write a proposal, but if you haven't refer to the scoring criteria, you're going in blind. So here's the portal for where you're going to complete your proposal. And you can see here that there's templates and guides to download. So if I were doing it for the ADA mobile clinic, I would just take the LOI as a starting point, whatever you put in the letter of interest, and really make that the base for what your real, quote unquote, real, but secondary proposal looks like. This is the one that really matters in terms of how much money you are given. And half of the proposals are going to be left out. So I'm going to highlight a few key areas of this. Title is obvious. You do need to say it's the same. If it's not, yeah, you have to propose the same thing as they've proceeded. And this one's interesting where it says organization name proposes to do, problem or gap, and in for. So looking at my example, Nilchik Traditional Council proposes. What will the project do? Mobile integrated health with ADA accessible unit that brings care directly to under-resourced communities. And what's the problem there? Castleloft lies within the boundaries, but lacks service. So they're bringing care into that community rather than getting people to not come out of it. So the first part, organization name, the traditional council proposes a mobile integrated health program to underserved and unserved communities. The problem is that they lie within the boundary but lack any permanent health services. And we'll just repeat that. So don't make this one too long, but really make it crystal clear what you're doing, what you're solving, and who you're solving it for. Remember that in for geographic or population, that plays into the portfolio piece I showed you at the start. So key item there where you're considering what is our actual population or community. Is it in 3 boroughs or is it one small village? And how are we interacting with youth or older people, elders? What's the target group? And like, what's the niche that you can really wrap up into a sellable, precious little format in less than 70 words? So you'll probably be locked into what this is, and they advise, they say most projects won't need an additional initiative, so I'll leave that blank. And how it aligns with goals. So here you can get that entire narrative. You're going to want to come to the initiative that you've done, healthy beginnings, and then ideally find a bullet point that you match to. But if not, then you consider how does it line up with some of the outcomes. So for this one, it is healthcare access, isn't it? So we'll scroll down to healthcare access. Healthcare access initiative aims to expand state health services, improve primary care access, deploy mobile dental clinics, So I would probably say this advances or this increases access to care in a remote Kenai Peninsula community within the Ninilchik or NTC tribal boundaries, which lacks any permanent health services at all. Particularly, this is needed for disabled people, elders, and individuals with disabilities who often would feel more barriers and burdens to traveling, causing exacerbation of any chronic health conditions that they might currently carry. And it lines up with increasing primary care access, increasing access to care in the frontier health community, and bolsters senior supports. Intellectual developmental disabilities are a big part of this narrative as well, and maybe they could draw that out too. In terms of outcomes, it's we're providing more continuous culturally aligned care by bringing on wheels the service rather than having to fly people into different communities outside of the tribal boundaries. And this is one of the biggest categories, so it's a good category to be in. Answer can only be 200 words, so that one has to be brief. Now, moving on to numbers. What on earth do you ask for when it comes to numbers? So this one, 250 to 1 million. There's a few ways to go about it. The first is to figure out how much is everything going to cost and then ask for whatever it's going to cost. And if you're for profit, adding in a profit margin. I like that in principle, but in practice, it's quite difficult to gather all those quotes and all those pieces of information you need to come up with that number at this stage. Now, you do have to make a budget. So we have to ascribe a number to the items we want to fund. But my preference really is to keep that in mind, like how much is this going to cost? I keep it in mind, but I usually lead with, because this is a competitive process, how can we make a competitive budget proposal? So you have to strike somewhere between the two. How can we go for an amount that is going to cover what we need to pay for and is accurate and meets our needs? And at the same time, how do we go for an amount which means we're not necessarily going to be at the top or the bottom of the scale, and we're going to show funders that we've thought about this, but also we're not being uncompetitive. So let's say they have a pot of 20 million for these 250K to $1 million awards. I personally would go in for like 500K or below. I like to approach it where if we can get this money in year one, we're more likely to get money in year 2 to 5. So how can we be competitive in year one? How can we convince them to fund us in year one whilst covering the cost, getting the outcomes, but at the same time, not taking the mick with asking for, if we're in the 1 to 5 million category, for example, 5 million outright, and coming up with lots of expenses to fit that. This is a 5-year program. This is 20% of the potential that you could get. So do bear it in mind. I'm gonna go over here and put 500K. I don't know how much the mobile unit costs though, so maybe it would be $1 million. That's how I go about it. Here, I think, well, obviously it's going to depend on what you're doing. For my clients, we're putting this because, well, we want to show results produce impact and keep it all packaged within year one, but also show the state that we're thinking long term. And this will benefit the community across 5 years too. Now, on the state's informational webinar, I want to draw your attention to a specific mention they made on the importance of mixing outcomes with sustainability. That was highlighted a few times, where if you had to boil it down, those are the proposals that are going to win. Those that show they can get the outcomes, they're clear on what the outcomes are going to be, and they can also be sustainable. So this year one operation can, let's go over to our example, can increase access to care for 500 people. And we're going to find a way to fund it post year one. We're going to kit out the unit, make the transformation, like buy all the necessary equipment in year one. And in year two onward of this program, even if we're not funded, we'll have opened up a new revenue stream through Medicaid where we can have more patient encounters and sustainably keep this going. I think it's great to go for multi-year projects, and that's why I recommend to go for C, producing an impact in year one, but benefit future expansion. But I'm a little bit skeptical that if you say we're going to need 5 years for this to work, that it's going to improve, or well, it's not going to improve your chances of winning, obviously. If that's the case, like, I think you need to show that you've got the partnerships. MOUs would be helpful, where they mention that and they say, let's say it's Alaskan Native Tribal Health Concern, and you ask for an MOU. They say, we support this. We will help across the 5 years. We think that this is worth investing in long term. There's mitigations you could do if you wanted to do across 5 years. I'm just saying that whatever happens in year one needs to be sustainable and needs to show results across across more than 5 years, even if you're not funded through the RHTP. So as I said, for this one, they would probably do well by highlighting, and see here they have the replicable thing, highlighting how this is replicable. They'll make a report that they can share with other tribal councils. And also, once they purchase that van, they'll be able to use it for an anticipated period of 10 years, say. And if it's not possible, like if they're going to need year two funding, then pick another outcome that will be sustainable across year two. So you could say that it is sort of needed to get RHTP funding year 2 to 4 as we grow this out and grow the encounters and can sustainably fund it ourselves. However, year one sustainable outcomes include demonstration of that replicable model, a greater number of members enrolled in our healthcare services, and 200 client or patient encounters, which is, which does have lasting effects. If a CHA or a doctor sees a patient and gives them a guide on, say, if it's like physiotherapy or healthy eating habits or exercise routines they can do on their hip, that does have measurable outcomes beyond that moment of being handed the leaflet. And bear that in mind. Like, any care that's provided, even if the care can't continue, if you're not funded for year one, the benefits of it will go across the 5 years or more, hopefully. So moving on, you can see there's a few more categories to fill in. And I would say, let's see, that they want you to be succinct. So don't try and hit the word count on all of these just because. Try and make a responsive answer. Now, what do I mean by responsive? Like, in this world of sort of grant funding and proposal writing. Being responsive is different from being compliant. Or compliant is you tick all the boxes and meet the minimum criteria to be considered for an award. And responsive is that you tick all the boxes of the perfect recipient of the award. So you're serving the right communities, you're following the right initiatives, you're achieving the right outcomes, you've got an appropriate team behind you, and you're doing something new and innovative that hasn't been tried before. So you have to review that scoring criteria, and if you can hit that criteria, then you are being responsive. Now, I want to just say that approach is a really important one because at the LOI stage, you probably define needs quite well, but maybe you were a little bit unclear on the approach. So I had some trouble. This is just a summary, so maybe they explained it in the rest of their LOI, but I had some struggles understanding what they're actually going to do. So we are currently licensed mobile health program. It's not quite clear there. Are they creating a new program? Are they buying a new unit? They said here that they are transforming, not expanding. So they asked, what makes this a transformation? Uses existing licensure, closes tribal boundary service gap, integrates prevention, and reduces downstream costs. It would be great to see what outcomes are they transforming as well, because that's really what it's all about, isn't it? It's about if you're bringing a clinic to a community that doesn't have a clinic right now, look at those key outcomes of unmanaged chronic diseases. Say it's like if 30% of the community of 500 have diabetes, then you're increasing the management of that, well, by over 100% because they're not getting anything yet. 133 more people getting insulin support and lifestyle support. I think for this one, if we jump back to what needs to be stated, it's describe your approach. What is the community knowledge or evidence base? What assets will approach? Why is this particularly compelling? Those questions weren't asked in the LOI. So you're going to want to say, well, why do the community want this? What have they told us, or what are the health indicators showing? And really kind of adapt this answer and the other one around the bullet points. AI is helpful. I use Google Gemini, where you can just, well, put a chat in. It's like the rest of them. Put in the bullet points. And then put in the, let's say that this was the original LOI response, probably just a summary. And then you can even tell it like what's the word limit. So 300 word limit. And it will help you. I would just copy and paste this into all of them, but I would use it to create maybe a draft response, and then you can edit it to make it more realistic and accurate. Transformative potential. Talk about the systemic, structural, durable change. And they want this kind of to reflect on your community, but also your region. As I said before, like models for improvement, collaboration between different recipients is a big focus for Department of Health. So how can you not only transform the healthy community you're serving, but those communities around you or others that are seeking care? And you're coming together with tribal partners, or at the RHTP convening sessions, you're presenting on it and really creating something that is new and shareable. I'm going to conclude on the budget. So jumping over to budget. Thankfully, there's not really a lot of boxes to fill in here. Most projects should leave this one blank, so I'm going to just hide that. And you can see you have to categorize your spend into each category. So I had a $500,000 budget. And what categories am I looking to fund? So if you come over to the applicant resource guide, you can see the allowable uses and a description of each. So for the example that we're working with, the mobile clinic, maybe some providers will be paid as a startup. Appropriate care. And I'd say this would be the main one. Capital expenditures. If you're kitting out a van, then that's going to be a big one too. Let's say they're kitting out the van for 150, 123. You can see here, is that going to be spent on personnel? Probably not. We have to buy that from someone, so that's going to be contractual. Personnel, so who's going to be working at this from our end, and what are they going to be working on? I would say that their focus is that appropriate care availability. So let's say we've got 1 or 2 half FTEs on this. You're always going to have to put in the fringe benefits on that. Let's do 20%. And you can see it's a little bit helpful. I had that 500 in mind where I can come in and figure out just a starting point for all of this. So I'm at 275 right now. What else do we need to get? Probably there's going to be equipment. And I'm going to just check, did I put that in the right place? Because equipment is on here as J. It just hasn't got its own box. So let's say we're treating that as the equipment in the van. 20, 1, 2, 3. Now, another thing to care for is administrative. You can get 3% on everything to cover your admin, like accounting, reporting fees related to this. So come across to personnel. I'm going to make that 0.03. And then fringe benefits, whatever my total fringe benefits are. Really, this is not the right way to do this. I'll do it this way. You can see I'm able to get that 3% just through the calculations. Total is 489,250. I said it was going for 500,000. So if we're doing a bit of collaboration work and there's staff time spent on that, then we can ask for money there. And let's say there's some training for users of this service that we need to put in. As I said, this is going to depend on what you want to pay for and how much you think things will cost. But my approach is often to try and come up with a sort of round figure first. Sorry if I wasn't sharing that. And then work backwards. Either's fine. So here I got the budget. Here's the categories. Can freeze that. Oops, no, won't let me. Personnel. So personnel, what are people spending time on? Training, appropriate care availability, and fostering collaboration. Fringe benefits, I just put 20% off the back of all of those. And then travel. So how much travel is being spent on this allowable use of making care availability more appropriate. how much travel has been spent on buying the capital expenditure, making the capital expenditure. So there you have it. That's budget. There's the narrative. You have to explain it all as well. But again, be referring back to the scoring criteria for everything. There's not. I don't think there's a lot of room to write chapter and verse in there, although there's no word limit. But again, tie it all back to allowable uses and goals. So here's how we scored. We're scored on, let's turn my head for that. Align with initiatives, align with intervention outcomes, real impact, and transformation potential. See, they're all kind of in that 10 to 20% range. So you need to hit all of these. Partnership strength. You need to have evidence of partnerships. You need to have accountable partnerships. You need to have those MOUs or verbal confirmations. So pay attention to this. And as you go through this, if you need any help, you can by all means reach out to me. I'm helping a few clients with their proposal, and I've been studying this for a while. So happy to help you in any way that you can. What we do is we come in. We don't really charge to help with the proposal, but we help people implement their grants. So in the communication side, or sort of a lot of the other administrative or even recruitment areas, we're able to bring in the right people that can act as contractors to fulfill them. I hope that you find this useful. I hope that you win the money, and we'll be celebrating together soon in August and collaborating to really turn this program into meaningful change for the communities that it's serving. So thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.